The Old Testament reading today is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, beginning with the first verse. Listen to me, O coastlands, and hearken, you peoples from afar. The Lord called me from the womb, from the body of my mother, he named my name. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. He made me a polished arrow. In his quiver he hid me away. And he said to me, you are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. But I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for nothing in vanity. Yet surely my right is with the Lord, and my recompense with my God. And now the Lord says, who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring back Jacob back to him, and that Israel might be gathered to him? For I am honored in the eyes of the Lord, and my God has become my strength. He says, it is too light a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will give you as a light to the nations, and my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. Thus says the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel, and his Holy One, to one deeply despised, abhorred by the nations, the servant of rulers. Kings shall see and arise, princes, and they shall prostrate themselves, because of the Lord who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel, who has chosen you. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
It's a reminder of that old story about the Episcopal priest who stood up in front of people, and he was having some mic troubles. So he said, there's something wrong with this mic. And the people said, and also with you. I love this passage from Isaiah, this whole idea of being called from your mother's womb, of being called to be a light to the nations, to be God's servant. Such amazing language. What does it mean for us as individuals, as a church, as people in our country? You know, we began our series on reconciliation, and reconciliation is lots of things, right? It's as basic as how do you get reconciled to God if you've become a stranger to God. You know, welcome to my world. Twice in the past week, once in a restaurant and once at a movie theater, someone walked up to me and their first words were, I've been bad. And I think, do you want to talk about this here? And what they're saying is like, I haven't been to church, but it's the new year, I'm going to be back. And I hope people come back in the new year and make it a habit through the year, but it's not really about I've been bad, but I'm going to go to church and then I'm good. It's really about like there's some distance between you and God, right? God's not like a reality in your life. How do you bridge that distance? How do you reconcile with God? That's a big question. How do we reconcile in the broken relationships that bedevil us? And it may be a person you're married to. It may be a child. It may be somebody in your family who voted wrong. It may be, who knows? How do we reconcile within a church? The United Methodist Church is facing possible division. How do we reconcile as the people of God called Methodists? How do we have reconciliation in our city where this past year we had all kinds of racial and other tension? How do we reconcile in our country? We going to inaugurate a new president this week, and there's just so much rancor and hard feeling. We began on Monday night with a program that some of you came to. If you missed it, it's on YouTube. It is an hour well spent. It was absolutely fabulous. Two things from that I would lift up to you. One came from Ray McKinnon. Ray is our pastor of our South Tryon Community Church, our sister congregation. Ray's just a funny guy. At one point, he's got this big beard, and I guess the mic got entangled in his beard, so it made the microphone to crackle. It was one of those something's wrong with my mic situations. And what was funny is he said, my beard causes the mic to do this, but you have to put up with it because my beard gives me superpowers. It was just a great line. And then later he was talking about race, and it's so interesting. He said, now, you may not know, I'm a black guy. It was just funny. If you were there, I guess it was funny. What he was saying in that was actually pretty interesting. He said, I'm a black guy. He said, so like, you guys, you need to try to think about, like, what's it like for black people? He said, I've got to do the same thing in return. I've got to think, like, what's it like for these white people? It's got to be both for there to be reconciliation. Right? He said this other thing that was wonderful. He said this whole business of doing God's work in the world, he said this isn't an option. This isn't extra credit for super holy Christians. This is just part of the Christian life. It's what we were made for from the womb. It's why God put us here on earth. Sometimes we have our reasons for thinking, well, now's not the time to do God's work. But something else that was said Monday night, it was maybe the greatest thing that was said Monday night. It was by our own Diane English. Diane's a layperson in our congregation. And over the past 30 or more years, she's given her life to helping people in Charlotte get to know each other, make peace, grow in understanding. She's had an incredible work and life. And what she told us the other night is that she heard God's call to do this at a really difficult time in her own life. Her husband, Roger, had just been diagnosed with a very serious degenerative disease that's very much like Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, usually when something like that happens, we just hang on, just cope here at home. But in that setting, she heard God's call to make a difference in the world. When Israel has this calling that David read, they're at their darkest moment. They're in Babylonian exile. Their hopes are totally dried up. And it is in such a moment that God calls them to be a servant, to be a light. Sometimes we get confused about this. Sometimes people say, I've reported this before, sometimes people say, James, you nag us too much about doing things in the world. Why don't you just focus on us and how we feel? And I've got to say to you again, these two things go together. You're not going to feel whole in yourself until you're doing what God put you here for. I heard a story the other day that's absolutely amazing that shows this. There's a guy that I know, and he runs a construction company. They had the contract on the expansion to Moore Place. I don't know if you know Moore Place. It's part of our housing scenario here in Charlotte, where the homeless have at least have a safe place to live and get their medicines and so on, the housing first. So we were working on the expansion, so he called in one of his construction supervisors and said, I want you to head up this project. And the guy said, no. He said, well, you work for me. I mean, you can't say no. Like, what's that about? And the guy said, I can't work on this thing for the homeless because I hate the homeless. I think they're bums and wasting their life, and they've made bad decisions. And I think it just hurts them if we help them, so I don't want to work on that. But his boss said, well, you work for me, go do it. So he oversaw the construction of the expansion. So he was there day by day by day, working on the construction, but also interacting with homeless men. At the end of the project, he came to his boss and he said, thank you for assigning me this project. So what I've discovered over the last several months is that I don't actually hate homeless people. I've discovered now that I actually love them. Like, who got healed? Who got healed? We're called to be a voice. This passage suggests that God's people are called to be a voice for God. I love what Dorothy Day said. She said, if I've achieved anything in life, it's because I've not been embarrassed to talk about God. We have got to figure out how to talk about God in this world, because we live in a world, there has never been so much ugly chatter in the United States of America as there is right now. There's fake news and lies and accusations and reactions and tweeting and blame, and it just makes you nauseated all the time. And we're the people of God. We're called to stand up and speak for God. We're called to stand up and speak for truth. There's so much angry chatter in all of this. We're the bearers of good news to the world. We are the ones who say there is such a thing as truth. There is such a thing as goodness. At Christmas Eve, you come in here, and it's so beautiful, isn't it? We raise those candles on Christmas Eve while we sing Silent Night. Everybody goes, oh, that's so pretty. And it really is pretty. But I don't really care how pretty it is, because it's a symbol of what God asks us to do. We find ourselves in a very dark world. And God says, like, be that bright light that banishes at least a little bit of the darkness. This is what we're here for. This time of year, I always spend time really helps me to reflect on the life and ministry of Martin Luther King, Jr. Now I know that people, they want to say, oh, you know, King, he was bad, he had extramarital, whatever they want to say. But I just have to say, in my life, he's been such a hero and an example of just how to talk and how to live. I remember when I was a child, I think I was 7 or 8, and I probably saw him on TV or somewhere, and I remember people around me were like, this man's scary, he's scary, but to me, he didn't seem scary. When he talked, I was thrilled. And I remember asking my parents, I want to go march. People are marching. Like I was 7. They wouldn't let me out of the house, you know. It was great. So since then, every year around this holiday, I spend time rereading some of King's sermons, and I listen to the ones that I can get recordings of. And what an eloquent, marvelous, visionary. You just don't hear this stuff nowadays. Anybody with a noble, high vision for who we can be as people. You know, King dared to talk about love in the public square. I don't know if you've been tracking any news at Fox, CNN, I don't care who you watch, who you listen to. Leaders in our country, you can wait a long time before you hear the word love. But what Martin Luther King says, God calls us to love. He preached a sermon one time. He wasn't doing civil rights. He was just preaching a sermon in his church. And he said this, the great event on Calvary signifies more than a drama that took place on the stage of history. It is a telescope through which we look out into the long vista of eternity and see the love of God breaking forth into time. It is an eternal reminder to a power-drunk generation that love is the most durable power in the world and that it is at bottom the heartbeat of the moral cosmos. We're such realists and we're such cynics, and we go, love, why we don't need love? We need toughness, we need whatever it is that we think we need. But brothers and sisters, we're Christians, right? We're the Jesus people. We're the love people. We're the love party. We never give up on talking about love. When King was presented the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, he was in Oslo, and in his acceptance words, he said this that's so important. He said, I refuse to accept the idea that the isness, I like that, I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of our present nature makes us incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts us. We are masters of the isness, right? We're just in a world and it's a mess, and you got to kind of put up with it and adjust to it and just kind of get by as best you can. But King says he's right. It's that God has made us able to reach up for an eternal oughtness, to be the noble people that God has made us to be. King talked about love. King, this is amazing. You can catch this on video. I saw a video the other day. King was giving a talk in Birmingham, and the people are shouting at him, and the police are wagging sticks in his face, and people are spitting in his direction, throwing things at him. And then one guy just comes up out of the crowd. He takes his fist and he just hits King in the face. And King stands up and the guy hits him again. And King refused to retaliate. Like, when did you last see that? And let me just say, this is what Jesus did. They arrested him. They flogged him. They spat on him. They ridiculed him. And he refused to retaliate. He loved. He loved. God calls us to be the love people, and we'll never be satisfied in our own souls until we're part of that great movement. It's hard. If we engage in this work, it will be hard. It will be frustrating. But everybody who's ever tried to do good in the world has found that you don't have instant results. You have to be patient. It takes a very long time. This movement of God in the world, we didn't get in the mess that we're in overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. I think about this great moment from January of 1956 in Montgomery, Alabama. I actually took my son there when he was a little boy. He wanted to go to Universal Studios and ride some rides there and the other things around Orlando. So I said, we had a little father-son trip. Like, yeah, I'll take you there. That'll be cool. And we did go. What I failed to tell him is that on the way there were these detours. So one was to Koinonia Farms for Clarence Jordan, started Habitat, and then we went to the Jimmy Carter Childhood Home, and then we went to Montgomery, and you go to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and you see where Rosa Parks, didn't get off the bus, and then we went to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church parsonage, which is pretty cool if you go there. You see the house, and you can stand on the porch, and they've marked the spot where, on a cold night of January '56, a bomb exploded. King wasn't home. He was at church, an organizing meeting around the bus boycott, but he received the chilling news that a bomb has exploded in your house. It's not a big house. Bomb has exploded in your house and it is on fire. He ran to the house because he knew his wife and his young daughter Yoki were in the house. And when he got there, he luckily found out they were okay. The house just being consumed by flames, and the crowd gathered, and they just had had enough. They'd had enough of this hatred. They'd had enough of the KKK, and they were ready to fight back. And King said, "Don't do anything panicky. Don't get your weapons." He said, "We will meet hate with love. We will meet hate with love." It's hard for King. Shortly after this, he was put in jail on trumped-up charges. He kept being abused, mistreated. The whole movement seemed so hard. And one night he couldn't sleep. He was fearing for his family, wondering how his life had come to this. He couldn't sleep, so he went down to the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, and sometime in the middle of the night, he began to pray, a prayer that anybody who's tried to do good in the world has prayed. He said this: "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think our cause is right. But Lord, I confess that I am weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage." He said he paused, then he heard a voice say this: "Martin, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you. I will never leave you alone. No, never alone." I'm positive of this. God is calling us, the Christians, to stand up for righteousness, to stand up for truth, to stand up for love. It's hard. That's why it's meaningful. That's why it's noble and holy. The Lord's always with us. I'll close with this. The March in Selma, when they made it across that Edmund Pettus Bridge there, King said these words that are amazing. He said, "I know you're asking today, how long will it take? No matter how difficult the moment, it will not be long, because no lie can live forever. The arm of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. How long? Not long." And then listen to this. This is amazing. This is chilling. "'Cause mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on." My brothers and sisters, be swift to answer him. You can't procrastinate. Oh, when it's convenient, when I feel better, when life gets sorted out, when whatever. Now. Now is when the world is broken. Now is when truth is being trampled. Now is when nobody wants to talk about love. Be swift to answer him. And be jubilant. Know that this is the joy. This is the life. This is the wonder that we were put here for. Stand up for good. Stand up for truth. Stand up for love. Thanks be to God. Hey, thank you for watching, and we hope you got something out of that. If you have any feedback for us, any response that was helpful to you, we would love to hear that. Please let us know. And everything that we put out is free, and we want it to be that way, but if you're able and feel led to support the mission of our church or the cost of providing this online content, here's how to do so.